Welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, and welcome back to another episode. This is episode 176 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast, and I have an awesome guest for you today. Can't wait to introduce her to you. But first of all, thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of podcast choices out there, and I really do appreciate you making me one of them. If you're enjoying this podcast, though, I'd love to get to know you a little bit more, and I can do that by having you show up and tag me on social. So take a screenshot of you listening to this podcast, or, a selfie of you listening to this podcast, and tag me on social media. It would be so cool to get to know you a little bit more. Of course, all the show notes for this particular episode can be found on my website at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/176. If you are ever looking for podcast show notes, you can find them all over there at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/podcast. Before we get into this week's episode and I introduce you to the amazing Rachel, I wanted to talk about just quickly my 6-week marketing mastermind program that's coming up for the first time in 2022, and it's coming up really shortly. I only run this 3 times a year, and I take about 8 business owners. So if you're super keen on some mentoring, some accountability, which so many small business owners need, including myself, and some group coaching to take 2022 by the horns and turn it into your business year, then come along and join me in February for the 6-week marketing mastermind program. You will be amazed how far you can move your business in 6 weeks with being pushed just a little bit and being held accountable for your actions through this program. You can get all the details by going to the show notes, as I mentioned before, or you can go to bit.ly/mastermind with Jen, and you can find the all the ins and outs, bibs and bobs there. Like I said, I have a special guest for you today. Her name is Rachel Klaver, and I get to chat for about 30 minutes with another marketer. I've got to tell you, it's one of my favorite things in life to do, is to chat marketing with another marketer. But I promise you there's something in it for you too. She's actually my first guest from New Zealand, so that's pretty cool and only my second international guest since I started the podcast. So I really wanted to focus on highlighting amazing Australian business owners, but every now and then someone extra amazing just sneaks in, such as Rachel. Rachel's business is called Identify, and she loves marketing just as much as me. She's on the podcast today to tell us a little bit about her story, actually. And probably the reason why I got her on the podcast was we've been discussing, branding a little bit, and and what your brand looks like if it's broken, like whether it's broken internally or broken externally. And like I said, she shares her story around how her brand was broken internally and how that came about and how she fixed it. So it's such an interesting conversation. She's just amazing and so generous with her advice and her tips and her tricks. So I'll let Rachel introduce herself, but I really want you to enjoy this episode. Oh, and sorry, just one more thing before you go. The audio every now and then gets a bit wonky, so please be patient. 99% of this interview is perfect, but there's just a patch or two where it's a little bit odd. So don't give up. I promise it will get better. Cool? Okay, fabulous. Thank you so much, my gorgeous listener. But here's my interview with Rachel. Rachel, I am pretty excited to have you on the podcast. I have to confess, you are like my second overseas guest and my first New Zealander guest. So welcome.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Can I just say I'm pretty excited because you are my podcast idol because I am so I am only I have a podcast too, and at the moment I think I've recorded episode 32, but you've been doing how many are you up to now?
Yeah, at the time recording this, it's 156 or something like
Yeah.
that. So almost coming up 3 years.
So freaking legend. And also I need to say, and you can put it in the show notes to remind people to watch it. I am in awe of you. I have brought you up to so many people because you, Jen, did a podcast about Canva, which I think is either the most incredibly intelligent thing anyone has ever done or potentially the most weird and bizarre thing that anyone's done for such a visual platform.
All right, I will take that on board, and maybe I need to go back and listen to it and see whether I confused people or enlightened them.
But it was just kind of cool. It's what? What do you mean a podcast about a visual design platform?
I've never really thought about it like that. Oh, that's very hilarious. So perhaps for my guests who know only your name and where you are from, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your business?
Absolutely. So like Jen, I'm a marketing strategist. I have a business called Identify, and we work mainly in New Zealand, but we also have an Australian office, which is apparently about an hour away from yours, Jen.
Yeah, which
is crazy. And we focus on delivering marketing strategies for small business owners and also then help them with marketing automation and Facebook ads. My husband also works in the business and he does CRM, but we've decided today that that's just going to tick away. We won't even talk about it. And yeah, I'm completely passionate about it. I was a freelance writer for years. I've written a whole lot of books. I have my own podcast as well. And essentially, my job allows and facilitates me to do all the other bits and pieces that I love in my business and pay someone else to do all the bits I don't like admin.
Sounds like a beautiful business strategy.
When it is. Books, it took me a long time to work out that was the key.
When you say books, are they business books or storybooks?
So I'm writing my first business book, and it's the first book that my last book was published in nine years ago. So I'm currently writing my first business book. The last book I wrote was actually about internet dating. And that's before Tinder. So it's now a relic. And so I wrote 3 books for Penguin. Before that, I'd written lots of educational books, and I was a parenting and education coach and facilitator. So I'd written quite a lot of books around that side. So it's kind of like a different thing. I actually have a lot of fear around writing this book this time because I've been so long around it. I can't. The publishing world has changed now. So back then, if you were an expert, you could get a book deal. Now you have to be an expert, plus you have to have 30,000 followers on Instagram, which I don't have. And you have to have this big profile. And I'm just not famous enough. So I'm going to go down the self-publishing route this year or next year and see if I can do it.
Wow. Oh, please let us know how that goes. I'm going to
send you. I'm going to send you.
Yeah, don't keep that one a secret at all. Oh, so good, so good. So there's probably nothing more I love on my podcast, and I hope that my audience loves it as much as I do. And that's talking marketing to another marketer. I just love it. So, how did you get into marketing? You've come through. What made you go from author and coaching in the space you did into marketing? What was the spark?
It's because of the book, I had to go in to do social media to promote it. I was using Twitter a lot. I was actually considered, I'm 50 now, so I'm ancient, but I was one of the first early influencers back in the days when social media was just starting to take off. And I was getting pulled into PR companies, and they're trying to say to me, what is this social media thing? Does it have merit? And I'd be saying, yeah, it's here to stay. And they'd all be sitting there with their hands crossed going, I really just don't think there's going to be any future in social media. It's just a passing fad. I was back in those days. I spent a year getting paid in shampoo, glasses and Skechers sneakers, but not being able to afford to pay my rent because I was getting freebies, but nothing paid, And on the other side of that, I was working as a facilitator in parenting and early education. And that was great, but I was a single parent and I had 3 kids and I was having to travel away a lot for work, and all my work was evenings and weekends. And I was like, actually, this isn't sustainable. One of my kids was getting anxiety And I was like, I'm going to take that writing that I've got, that experience. And I was doing a lot of freelance writing and I'd written some books. I'm going to take that and my social media, and I'm going to go and see if I can work for another social media, a marketing agency. And so they made me a marketing trainer. They trained me up in their thing. And I was pretty happy there, but they gave me they renegotiated my contract and said, you're making a lot of money and are very successful, so we're going to cut your commission by 25% to put that money into the business. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I started Identify. And that's how it happened. But yeah, it was a conscious decision, actually, not so much to do marketing, but actually just to find a business that suited my lifestyle. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with marketing.
Yeah, so good. So good. I love that story. And wouldn't you just love, in some really bad way, to have recorded those people who said that social media was a passing fad, and just kind of send them a bit of an audiogram now going, how are you going with that?
I do, because some of them like are now leaders and advising their customers on how to use social media. I'm always like, I remember sitting in that room with you where you're like, nah, this is not going to happen, you know. And also, like, some of them would pay me, but some of them were like, hey, we would like you to come and talk to us, but we don't really think there's any value in you paying for that advice. And now I'm like, wow, I really wish that I'd stuck with that, because I reckon I would have raked in the millions.
Oh dear, hindsight. Hey, she's a very powerful thing for sure. But anyway, we aren't here to talk about that. The topic that kind of piqued my interest, that you approached to sort of have a bit of a chat with me about today, was kind of on that branding level, but really a broken brand. So can you tell us a little bit about, how do you know if your brand's broken, for a start, or maybe what branding is, and then how do you know it's broken?
So I think you can have a public brand that looks great, but it's broken internally. And at some point that's going to catch up. And that's, so when I started the business, because I'd been a strategist, I didn't want to do that same thing because I felt that didn't fit with my integrity. So I started a business that was social media management, essentially. But there was a slight flaw in the fact that I have a very low boredom threshold. And after 6 weeks, I get bored with doing social media for anybody, but I want to keep getting paid for it. Because I still want to be paid. And so I realized I had to start employing other people. And I actually grew my business from it was just going to be me, and it was profitable right at the beginning, to being a team of 14 part-timers. Most of them are women returning from work, and I'd priced it wrong, so it wasn't profitable. I wasn't training these people right, and I had turned from a person that's best in doing and front-facing work with clients to someone who was managing this team. And externally, our brand looked great. We won awards for our culture, which was actually quite toxic internally. We had good names, like we had a very good presence, because I'd kept my social media content going and stuff like that. And so it looked like it was active. But this was the key. When it came to Facebook groups, which, you and I are both in, or anywhere else where someone would say, hey, do you know of a good marketing person who can help me with this? We were never recommended, ever. And I think that one of the things that happens is, we have a rule now. We only work with people in business who already have good word of mouth or repeat business. Because if they have got that, it tells me that they look after their customers, because marketing is not just about bringing people in, it's about what you do with them afterwards as well. And so for us, we had a broken brand. And it was this kind of, it basically ended with one of the people in our team left. And I basically, because of that, she'd been looking after the rest of the team. I kind of opened my eyes up and went, oh my gosh, we actually have hardly any customers. We're getting no referrals. No one's coming back. No one's telling us we're the most amazing thing that's ever happened to them. And I am broke. I'm not earning any money. Somehow along the way, I stopped to pay myself, and my team is getting paid, but I'm not. And it's broken. And my husband had just been made redundant. And so he said, I'll come and work with you for a month, and let's see if we can work on what this happens. And he basically opened everything. And we had what he calls a come to Jesus meeting, where basically I had to repent of all the crimes I had committed against my business. But I was so busy trying to create this public brand of what we looked like. I hadn't worked on this internal brand of our culture and our values and our direction. And I think that's a really important thing to make sure you've got right. You know, having the internal culture and those values is actually your strongest marketing message in the end. Would you say that? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I guess for a lot of business owners, though, they don't have that team. It's kind of
Yes.
the buck stops with them. So if it's broken, it's up to them to fix it, it most certainly. And I really do think that that is something to think about when you're looking at social media, is sometimes things look really rosy
Yeah.
on the outside, and social media has a really bad habit of only showing up in the good times, not the
It
bad
does.
times. So I think there is a lot of smoke and mirrors out there when it comes to people and to profiles on social media. So that's a really interesting thing to think about with you guys, what the perception was versus
Yeah.
what the reality was. So what did you do?
So I basically decided to take 2 days to have what Australians would call a doona day and New Zealanders call a duvet day. I basically did what any self-respecting person do. I went to bed and put the duvet over my head for 2 days and just went, I'm a failure. I'm so embarrassed that I've allowed it to get to this stage. And then I had to make a decision. Were we going to just close Identify down and just pretend it never happened and I could go and get like a proper job? Or we could do something else, or would we work on it? And so we decided together, Rod decided, look, let's do this. I'll stay for a few more months. He's still working in the business 4 years ago, that's later, so you know. And so he said, I'll stay. And what we decided to do is we went, if we are going to fix this, we can't just fix it from now. We have to fix it retrospectively. So what we did is we went to every single person that we had worked with in the last year, and we said, were you happy with us? What did we do wrong? And can we fix it for you now? And so what we did is we did have a small team then, and so we just put them in charge of looking after the weird collection of clients that had somehow managed to work with us. And back then it was a very different model. You know, we were doing monthly marketing, which is why we had a team. And he and I flew all over the country at our own cost, and we redid all the work that we had done wrong the first time, or other team members had done wrong the first time, where I hadn't checked it or I hadn't done it. And we repaired those relationships.
So what patterns did you see of things that people said that they weren't happy with? Like, what were the patterns that started to come out? Because there's probably, when I think about it, there was probably a very short list.
Yes, actually the biggest problem, which is why we changed our model actually in the end, was that because our business had grown so fast, and I'm a person where I'm like, okay, if this is your job, I'm just going to let you own it. I had not made sure that my values were the values of the business. And I think this happens a lot with really fast growing businesses where you accidentally grow and you're not planning to. I hadn't ever really worked out what my values were, which meant my values were at the mercy of whoever else was the strongest member of the team. And even though I'm the owner of the business, I'm not actually a very strong person when it comes to dealing with strong characters, you know, and I attract strong characters into my life. Like they love hanging out with me because I'm like, yeah, go for that, you know, like that's who they are. And so I was at the mercy of that. And that's not their fault. It's my fault as a leader, like that you have to own that. But what came out again and again was your messaging is great. You were great when we had a conversation with you. I liked you, but when we got given someone in the team, that did not match up with what you had said. And it really made me realize that I was so filled with all this time having acquisition and getting the sales to get that growth to feed this machine I'd bought or created, that I hadn't thought about how to make sure that my customers, when they came in, were looked after. And so what we had to do is go, what are the systems in place in our business that we have to create to make sure that that happens? That was really the main one, that was really the thing that kept coming up. And they were tempted to go and blame particular people in the team. But, you know, and I think probably I went through a phase of maybe a couple of months, but I also wanted to blame people in the team.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually it was like, when you own the business, that's actually your responsibility.
Yeah, buck stops.
Unfortunately, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. So that this is such a candid conversation, and I love that you are sharing warts and all with my audience, because I really do think that yeah, there is probably people listening that are wondering, well, my business values, what are they? I was only talking about it on a podcast just recently when we were talking about, showing up, because human to human marketing is
Yes.
something quite big in my world that I talk about a lot, and it's about showing up, and it was like about bringing those business values. But if you don't know them, then how is anyone else going to know them? So did you just take a good look inside yourself to find your values and then start implementing them as your business values, or how did you tweak that side of it?
Yeah, so one of the things I think when you've got a team that people make a mistake for, and I've actually, prior to this, I'd actually worked with businesses to help them create their values. I used to go, oh, you need to talk to the whole team and work it out. I don't believe that now. I believe that the owner, or if you're in a, like I'm, with my husband in there, the values have to be very, very close to your own personal values, because if they don't, you can't sustain them. And the values can't be aspirational. They have to be values that are actually deeply embedded in who you are. And so we looked at what we do. Like, we have we both love giving and we love that generosity thing. So one of our values is add value. Like, that's really important. I used to be a teacher. I worked with early childhood, and I was already known for the fact that I didn't like to use jargon and I like to keep things simple. So keep it simple became one of our values. And then the third one, which actually came from my husband, which I've really loved because he'd been with big corporate, is he brought one of the big corporate values in, which was follow the customer, which is looking at what's happening around those customer needs and changing what we do to fit that. And this morning, actually, we just had a meeting planning for 2022. And we said, what has changed this year because of COVID? What has changed that means that our follow the customer plan has to now change to follow what the customer needs?
Yeah.
And those have been our so now every decision we make does it fit under keep it simple, follow the customer, and add value? And if it doesn't, we don't do it.
Yeah, I love that. Like, there is a reason why my podcast is called Small Business Made Simple, because keeping things simple is clearly a value that I hold quite
We have the same
dear to
one.
myself. Yeah, absolutely.
Why we were totally vibing before the podcast, and you're like, I've got to make sure we start the podcast, because when you meet someone with the same values, and I think that's the other thing I've loved about this, because one of the things we did is during this is we used to offer everything, and the other thing we realized to do is to keep it simple and to add value and to follow the customer. We had to narrow what we do, which I call narrowing the arrow, and it sharpens it and makes it easier for your message to come through. But part of that narrowing and keeping that thing simple and really adding value with that stuff is we had to go, actually, this other stuff that we would like to do, it's not in our skill set, so we actually need to get rid of it.
Yeah, or outsource it. Yeah.
Yes, we dropped websites, which was the best thing ever because never enjoyed it.
Which is a whole other topic, I guess. But like you talked about, going and asking the tough questions to your clients and customers, which, kudos for that. A lot of people would have stayed under the Juno cover for a lot longer and not done that. Flying around the country, talking to them, fixing, repairing relationships, repairing marketing. How long did all this take? What was the process?
It took 6 months. It actually took us almost personally to our own personal revolving credit line of what we were prepared to pay, like cost ourselves personally. We didn't pay ourselves for the entire 6 months. We had to pay our team, but we weren't generating, so we didn't pay ourselves. So we took quite a big financial hit to do that. Personally, which we've recouped since, and it's been completely different. It took a long time, but I will say, and we mentioned before, one of our colleagues, Tracy, in our team, who lives an hour away from you, she was one of our clients back then, and she was living in a place called Nelson in the South Island, and Rob went down and worked with her. She was one of the most outspoken ones around how we hadn't done a good job. And she now works for us and works with us as a marketing strategist. And I feel like that road of redemption is quite an amazing one, because we did such, a good job of repairing it. And then we worked with her and trained her in elements of what we wanted her to do. She started using it in her business. And then as she started moving into consultancy and growing, she wanted to work with us because she knew that we had the same values. And that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is kind of very cool indeed. Yeah, that is really quite amazing. What sort of year are we talking here? Like, are we talking post-pandemic, like post 2019?
Oh no, this is 4 years ago. So
Yeah, okay.
yeah, it was 4 years ago. And I will say that this is one of the things I think with people when they go, is this going to be a quick fix? I think, I would say the moment you realize that you're not getting word of mouth and referral business, you need to fix it as soon as possible. Like, I let things slide for probably quite a long time. Part of my personality is it's going to get better tomorrow. So I just kind of let things slide. And really we were pretty far gone before we even got to that stage. And it wasn't all the fix, a year later after that, we were actually like, look, actually the model we've got still not working. We have to narrow it further. And we had to end up making 2 of our team redundant. And they both still don't speak to me. And I still feel, they're pretty over it now, but I still feel this horrendous shame that I built a business that was so wrong and broken that it ended up costing 2 other people their jobs. Because when you're employing people, you take that sort of so seriously. But they weren't the right fit for our values and our direction. And I think that if you can get those things sorted now, like if you're listening now and you're going, I want to grow my business, and because I think you'd agree, Jen, so many of our clients, their way of measuring success is they'll say, I can't wait to employ my first person.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Yep.
And I'm like, until you've got your really clear values and you've got your systems in place and you know that you're looking after your customers, employing that first person, if you don't have that, it's probably not going to be a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I must say, I hear a lot of, I can't wait to get my first 10,000 followers or something like that. It's probably, that's the measure of success. And I'm like, you can buy those, and it won't help your business.
That's a whole other topic. I have a struggle with this because I interviewed for my podcast a guy called Lucas O'Keefe who got 150,000 followers in a year. And I interviewed him and I thought it was going to make me feel better. And I think for about 3 weeks after, I was on a deep depression. Like, I have 1,300 followers on Instagram. Like, what am I doing with my life? You have to remember, I have a business that makes money and all he does is he's on Instagram. So I'm okay.
Yeah. Yes. And is
deeply stressed.
Yeah. Well, shout out to him, but
yes, it was amazing. But I just mean, like I think when you're a business owner, we forget the metrics that we're meant to be sharing. And I think getting repeat business and word of mouth, like often people are like, if you're listening and that's what you have a lot of, I want to say you've got a great business.
Yeah.
Like it's a sign of health when you have repeat business and word of mouth referrals.
Yeah. I love that. The 2 very easy to measure metrics as to how you are actually going in business. I know we've talked a lot about being broken internally, but from your experience, perhaps more as a marketer rather than the experience of your personal business, how can you kind of tell if a business is broken externally? Like, what if you sort of aren't recognizing the signs internally, but from an external point of view, is there anything, well, I guess maybe that is the referrals that are coming through.
I definitely think externally, like if you were looking at a business and going, if you ask about a business in a Facebook group, and you don't want to be slamming anyone and going, hey, can you tell me about this business? I'm not talking about that. But watching how people are interacting, I think is really important. Like I was talking about this with someone yesterday and saying, one of the things I'm really strong on is your marketing needs to be consistent no matter how busy you are. And I said, I don't want to be ever thought of the person who only turns up on social media because I'm having a quiet month. And to me, that shows a lack of trust and authenticity around my brand. So I think those are things that are really important is like if you're seeing consistent messaging coming through. The other thing I say, like one of the things I talked about with you before the podcast started is that, it's really important. Like I'm telling you the story and I feel very comfortable saying it. But if I'd done it during that time when it was really broken, that's a really bad time to be talking about it publicly.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Well, I think a couple of reasons. One, if you've already got some clients that have managed to stay in, coming in and publicly announcing that your business is a mess and that it's a total disruption, you're going to lose a few clients that you used to already have. But the other thing is while you're in that pain point and pain period, you're not able to think about what you're learning from it. And the powerful story is a redemption story. The crisis point of being in pain isn't the story. The story is the redemption that comes after it. So I feel like, one of those struggles as someone who truly believes, and you're a human-to-human marketer, you understand that, is when you're authentic, and this is a hard thing, authenticity isn't always about being honest about how you feel today. And that's a hard thing to work out.
Yes, yeah, it is. Absolutely. You only have to go on Instagram to see that there are many people who would like to tell you how they're feeling today.
Well, a good example was I did a TikTok complaining about how many e-commerce businesses do a thing going, please buy from me today. I'm very stressed. Who in the history of man has ever bought from someone who's begging on the internet?
Probably their friends and their family.
Yeah, probably. But it's not great for look. So you still have to, it's when you're going through that crisis, you still have to present something. Mm-hmm. But I would stop short of doing fake success stories during that time. Mm-hmm. So like up your adding value, up your information and things like that. But I would stop short of having people say, oh my gosh, we've had all this success with this person, because that's an out and out lie. So that authenticity is like when you're rebuilding your brand and you're trying to fix it internally, you should still be posting, you should still be consistent, but really focus on adding value and really giving. And what it does is it actually heals a bit of you as well, because you're able to kind of do some good while you're trying to deal with this mess that's out there in private.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to, like, as something else I talk about quite a lot is making yourself easy to buy from. And just, when you said before, someone begging, isn't making themselves easy to buy for, neither is someone who is spiraling. So, because they're probably putting up their own gates, and they're closing their own doors type of thing. So I guess, thinking if you are listening and you're wondering, well, I don't get many referrals and, I'm not getting many repeat customers, then examine how you're showing up. Like, have a think about that human to human marketing, get someone to have a look at the way you're showing up, someone that you trust who can actually authentically tell you, not your best friend who is going to say, you're great, you're fine, it's okay. But someone who, like a marketing coach or mentor or something like that, who can actually tell you the truth as to what is actually happening inside your business, but also give you some great tips and tactics on how to get out of it as well.
Yeah. And I think too, one of the things I learned from it is we now have email post follow-up emails and things like that, accountability, where we do check in with our clients after they've finished with us with a strategy or other things. 2 weeks later, we send them an email, tell us what you think. And, vast majority of that is really positive. Every now and again, they'll be, hey, I thought so-and-so was going to do this, or often it's me. I have, because I'm not good at admin. They'll say, oh, you said you'd send this, such and such. And it's things that they probably wouldn't have followed up with me before, but because we're sending that email, we're doing it. So I think my biggest thing was I realized that I had not been asking people how our work had been. And I know that it was because deep down, I was terrified of the answer. And I think it's really important to set this up and not see it as against you when someone has a criticism or a feedback, but actually taking it on board. We had someone last year who was very nasty to us. And I was like, and so I sat there and I went, wow. I sat down, I listed what that person said, and I could eliminate a bunch of it. And luckily he also was very nasty to someone, not for that person, but luckily he was very nasty to someone else the next day. So I went, oh, it's not me, because it was a completely different situation. But I could still see 1 or 2 things in there that I went, those are potentially valid. I'm just going to put those to a side. So if anyone else says it, I know that 2 people have said it, and then potentially that's a problem that has to be addressed. And that's a change for me. I used to be very scared to hear feedback. And now I'm like, I need to listen to that. I don't listen to it all. Like I don't take on everything, but I also now have a community of fans and clients and stuff where I can go, hey, this person said this thing. Do you think that's fair and valid? And they'll tell me pretty fast if it is or not.
That's good. You need those people in your community. And I think the feedback falls into a growth strategy. Like when you break up all the different types of strategies that you need under a strategy umbrella, it sits in growth. Because what you don't know won't help you grow, but and looking for the patterns. Again, I love the way you say, I didn't hear it once. You have to hear it a couple of times, because once could be a bad day for somebody. But if you start to see the pattern, then it forms part of that growth strategy to really help you in your business. So I just think that's a great tip to give someone.
Yeah, it really helps. And I'll tell you a fun one that's happened recently for us. Out of the 4 years ago, one of the things we did to give value and also to drum up our new business and find new markets is we started running a full free day marketing training around New Zealand, where I'd just fly in, I'd run this thing. And it was great. And I was terrible at selling in it. Like I had no idea how to sell. In fact, the second time I ran it, I said, any questions at the end of the day? And the room said, yeah, why are we here? Like we've had a great day. We've learned heaps, but it makes us deeply uncomfortable that you have not sold to us, because this is a free event. We expect it. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, you could work with us. But recently, I have a Facebook group, and they started giving me a lot of feedback that I should not be offering that for free anymore.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm running the very first online paid version of that at a very low cost. And people are buying it. And it was surprising to me, but like that's also the thing. When you actually end up giving value and creating a brand, people will follow you and they will actually start fighting for you. If you can't see your value enough too, they actually start pushing for that as well, which I find is amazing.
That is tremendous. That is just so good. And really, like what every business owner is kind of should be the goal, to build that community who, rising tide lifts all boats, and they're part of the rising tide, helping you in your business because they can see such value in what you've done and what you're doing. Rachel, this has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate your authenticity and your honesty around this, because I really do think that broken businesses, I think we will start to see a few more of them pop up. I really do think that the pandemic in both our countries and around the world has taught us so many lessons, and some of those lessons haven't been good lessons. And I really do think that there will probably be people listening to this ready to examine their business, because like you say, you can put your head in the sand, but eventually it will actually catch up with you and you will have to deal with it, to which you've given some great tips and tricks around. Thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure, and I've just loved it. I've loved meeting you properly after seeing your awesomeness for so long. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Any final parting words, any pieces of wisdom that we haven't covered?
I think probably the biggest thing is that for all business owners, whether they're a solopreneur or a team, is that your business is meant to be something that you actually love having. And often when your value is out of alignment and those other things are happening, it stops being that. So, I think it's a reminder to all of us as business owners, we get to have a business we love. That's the whole point of having a business. Otherwise, we should just have a job. So, if you're not feeling that, let's you take some time and work that out, because that's the key. Have a business you love.
Love that. Beautiful wisdom to leave the podcast on. Rachel, if anyone's listening and want to get in contact, where's the best place to find you?
So we're on identifymarketing.com.au or identifymarketing.co.nz. You can go to either one.
Yeah, beautiful. And what's your favorite social platform?
Oh gosh, it used to be LinkedIn, but I've become Instagram obsessive.
I
I'm
love
trying to
that.
I'm trying to crack the 2K.
Another confession.
Yeah, so I'm at Identify Marketing on there, but I've just started my own brand account. I am Rachel Klaver just this week. And I have 42 followers. So I am kind of a big deal. Just watch the space.
Beautiful. Not that numbers count, but anyway.
Followers.
And just before we leave, one more, what's the name of your podcast? Because clearly people listening are podcast listeners.
It's called Map It Marketing, and it's all about how to make marketing simple and build a marketing map.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you so much again. It's been such a pleasure.
It was lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did, chatting and making it. Again, she's so amazing and frankly a little bit hilarious on Instagram. So go and follow her. You'll get a bit of a chuckle as well as some really good tips around marketing. I loved her final message about have a business you love. How true is that? And if you don't love your business, then we need to chat. Of course, I'd love to talk to you more about marketing in my Like-Minded Business Owners Facebook group. If you're not a member there, hop over and join. Remember, you can find the show notes at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/176, and you can find all Rachel's links in those show notes as well if you want to go over and follow her and become part of her community as well. But I'll see you next week on the podcast for episode 177. But in the meantime, let's hang out and get social on social. You can find me on Instagram at @JennaDonovan_. Send me a DM. Love to hear from you. Facebook, come and join the Like-Minded Business Owners Facebook group. Or of course, come over on LinkedIn and we will connect over there as well. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.